welcome everybody to, this is session 3 of day 3. So we're at the halfway point of the week, which has gone extremely fast. It's great to see so many regular faces popping up on the in the waiting room and waiting to sort of listen in on the conversations. Like I keep on saying, if anybody's got any questions that they would like to ask based upon what is being said by Sean and Jonathan, please drop them in, because it's really important, I think, for you guys to get as much out of this as possible, and not for me just to get the questions answered that I want. It's really important for everybody else to get be part of that as well. While we're getting going, if it's okay for me to throw over to you, Sean, to start with, just to give us a bit of an introduction to yourself, your synopsis of your career, just to give everybody an idea of what you've done so far.
Cool. Yeah. Hi, I'm Sean. My career so far. Well, I am a developer by trade, which was self-taught. For a lot of people, they find it very strange. I studied fine art as my degree, and so to jump into dev is quite a shift. But what happened was that I used to do a lot of IT work when I was a student. It's about the time when websites started really taking off and the IT company saw an opportunity. So I just basically learned how to do it. And I then moved on to working for Protein in Shoreditch, which is where I met Jonathan. And we worked on numerous brand campaigns and internal products, building software and building digital experiences. And then that kind of led us to making a software product, which we spun out of Protein and ran that for a while. When we kind of ran out of money, we started freelancing, and that's where Midnight really was born. We did that freelancing thing for a while, and then decided to just kind of go for it and turn it into an agency. And that's sort of where we're at today.
I think sometimes they're the best ways for those sort of things to revolve, aren't they? They're just it's just a series of
yeah. I mean, but yesterday one of our employees actually asked me, like, did you ever decide to run your own business? Was that something you always wanted to do? And I was a bit like, well, actually no, it's a complete accident, to be honest.
Yeah. But I think you can overplan these things, and it's good just to let it flow, especially in creative fields. It's a thing that happens at any given point. It just feels right.
And if you keep saying yes to projects, you need to find people to help deliver them.
Jonathan, can you just do the same for us, just to give everybody a bit of a background that doesn't know?
Yeah. So I'm Jonathan. I studied. I'm from New Zealand originally. I studied. I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I studied general business, and I liked science. So I saw on the Harvard University website that when you do business studies there, you also need to do psychology. And so I thought, okay, maybe I'll do some psychology. And I like science, so I did a science degree and a business degree, and then moved to London after I finished, and was looking for a job I could do research and market research. To try to find a market research job. No idea what I was going to do. And then I randomly met someone at a party who worked at Protein, and they said they wanted to do market research, like consumer insights. And so that's when I started. So I was doing a lot of consumer research, like what we called insight. And Protein then developed some editorial off the back of that. So we had a magazine, so I was doing editorial and interviewing people and writing profiles, and nothing to do with technology really at all. And then moved into more strategy roles, and then started to do project management, and specifically digital project management, and realized after a few projects that to be able to communicate with developers, kind of need to know a little bit about how things work and how generally code worked. So I started to explore that and learn how to code, and self-taught basically on the job. But I found it was really important, particularly when you're trying to relay messages from a non-technical client to very technical developers. It helps if you understand that stuff. And so, yeah, I was working closely with Sean. We had an innovation lab at Protein. We were just experimenting and building software to try and help the agency be more innovative and the team more efficient. So we were trying to like build internal tools that the team could use. And one of those tools that Sean mentioned, it's like a contact management system. So it was a time of influencer management. So we had influencer marketing, and the agency was doing lots of that. So we had loads of contacts in people's heads and spreadsheets, and so we were looking at how we could bring efficiencies into that, and we built a system that was like a visual contact list. Thought it was a good idea, so we with some funding from the founder of Protein, we left and spent a year solidly doing that. And we had people like Vice and Dazed, and It's Nice That using it. Great experience, but then kind of ran out of money, ran out of steam. I think there's particularly when you come from an agency background and you're used to working on different projects and them having an end date, it takes a different mindset when you're just working on one product and trying to make like incremental shifts. And because we were developers first and foremost, we'd talk to someone and we'd revert to like, we just keep building, and we just keep building and building and building on our product, and it then just became really bloated and complex, and not the best way to do it. So yeah, that's when we started freelancing, and that's when Midnight started.
So I think for context, before we go into the specifics of what the future might hold for the industry, I think for context, it'd be good to know where you've positioned Midnight with all of that knowledge and background that you've got in different areas. Is it really as simple as a digital studio, or is there much more complex to that?
Yeah, I think what sets us apart is we've got a really, because we've come from both this agency and product background, we've got good understanding of both these worlds. And so we're a web development studio. We build web products and websites. Most of our clients are other agencies. So we work with lots of creative agencies, design studios, branding studios, PR marketing agencies, anyone that's being asked to do something digital but doesn't necessarily have the skills in-house. And we really try and act like a partner. So not just developers that here's some designs, can you build it? Try and be more strategic and try and get involved earlier in the process and be really collaborative and have that close communication. Like we are working together to build a product or a website for an end client. So that's kind of our positioning. And yeah, as well as working with agencies, we work with teams within larger organizations. We do a lot of products, and that's kind of leaning on our product background, like understanding how to get something off the ground, understanding that when you're building something new, you should take this phased approach. Start small, get something into people's hands and iterate on it. And because we've run our own business, we can take like a commercial mindset, which I think people find quite interesting, quite useful. So yeah, we do lots of brand experiences, content-based sites, typically things that are a little bit more complex. So it could have some complex functionality, some need to integrate with some backend services. But yeah, we work with a lot of designers. A lot of design agencies, and design's a really important part of our business and really close to me and Sean. And we're making sure that all our team have this love of design, even though we're maybe taking a more of a technical angle. So attention to detail is super important to us, and like design fidelity and helping creatives convert these ideas into living, breathing digital projects.
Yeah, I think there's not many easy ways to get into the idea of the future, that it's got to be sort of like 2-footed and sort of dive straight into the deep end, I think. But going back to you, Sean, is it when Jonathan then mentions about the sort of strict focus on design, which is really refreshing, obviously from our perspective and for the audience that we have, it is all very, looking in on the creative world. Do you think that has to be one of the main focuses, irrelevant of where it goes, in what, whether it's e-commerce or AI or social media, etc., etc. Design has to really now start to play a major role in that, because I think there has been quite a long period, and I've never really been 100% in digital. I've been, from a brand perspective, been dipped your toe into it as and when it's needed, and it's needed more than most. But it's never really been a full-time role of mine. But there has been periods where certain assets or products or developments haven't always been design focused. It's always felt a little bit more like the technology came before the design. Do you think from a user experience, the future has to be so much more focused on the design and the creative side of it?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think one of our approaches is that the technology should be invisible. Like, nobody wants to see the technology. No one wants to know really about what the code does. They're much more important that they know how to use it or it looks beautiful. What we do is try and hide that, what goes on behind the scenes, and showcase the design that someone's put a lot of thought into. And that's partly what our attitude about why we partner with studios and why we have the kind of traction that we have, is that we do take that attitude of like, well, if you're going to change design, there's probably some logic behind it. There's probably some reason for you wanting to change it. You want to make something better, or something doesn't work. And so we often say that we're on the side of the product. So we'll make decisions to improve the quality of the product based on someone's design changes or our feedback, often at a commercial loss for us. It'd be more efficient if we just pumped it out and said it's done, and you can't make any changes, or we're going to charge you for those changes or whatever. But if we look at something and think it can be better, then we want to make it better. And a lot of that is not to do with the technology. That's all to do with how it looks and feels. And it's kind of like, that's the old days of the iOS versus Android debate. iOS just looked 10 times better than Android, even if it wasn't better. It just looked and felt better. And so I think, I know all the stuff that's going on at the moment with AI and things like that. It's just all of that's just average. Everything's going to be average if we follow that. So design needs to have the opportunity to lift that above average.
Yeah, and funny if you mentioned the Android AI, it's like the TED Talk with Simon Sinek. You've seen that with the Apple versus Microsoft and the usability and why you were attracted to that. And is there ever I think I'll throw this at you, Jonathan, is there ever a concern, being the devil's advocate of that question, that design being overly designed can sort of dumb it down, the technology can just be to a point where it just becomes really exclusively for other creators because we understand it and the consumers don't. This sort of, this, we all use Apple because we know it's a design thing, and other people probably only use it because it's trendy. There's sometimes will be this us and them mentality when it comes to over designing things. I think digital products are probably the most guilty for that.
Yeah, I think it's like trying to get that balance. It's particularly with digital products, particularly with like business software. Like one thing that, because when previous software company that were running it, it was a business tool, and business tools are very poorly designed for the most part. And I think that's there's no reason for them to be poorly designed. So like there's no reason for the tools that you use at work to not be as beautiful as the tools that you, and as intuitive the tools you use when you're not working. And so I think, design is really important when it comes to products, but there's like superfluous design. You've got to focus on, particularly with a functional product, the user experience, and making things intuitive is critical. So I think, too much focus can be put on UI when you're doing products. But it's all about a balance. And I think that's what we try and do is like lean on our experience and work really closely with designers that we're working with to try and get that balance.
Yeah, I think the other thing I'd add to that is that there's a natural thing that we see all the time, which is that people focus on an area that they get really obsessed with, and sometimes we have to say no one is going to use that. Like literally no one is going to worry about that. Like you guys are too deep in it. Like we get this all the time with search and filtering and people saying like we need all of these tags because we talk about our work in this language, like we do this and this and this. And it's like, but as an outsider, like you're never going to know to search for those terms. Like nobody knows that. No one's coming to the site to use it like that. You just know it because you're in too deep. And you know that applies, you know, artists, when to stop. It's always been, it's the same thing. And we had that, you know, that was part of the problem with our initial business with the software, which is that we love to build. We never really stopped to see whether we were actually building something that anyone else wanted. It's like, okay, we're just going to build and build and build.
But I presume having a model where you act as a collaborator or partner, that allows you to, I presume, see it from the consumer's perspective as well. So you sort of ultimately ending up with a product that you'd want to use because you're seeing it from an external perspective and you're not that deep in it.
Yeah. And also like from working with agencies and businesses, there has to be, on everyone involved, there has to be a commercial level and a commercial conversation as well. It's like the more you do, the more you're going to spend, the less it's going to take longer to hit the market, blah, 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 you know, like, so sometimes we can use the approach of like, well, do you really want to spend that much more money and time and prevent launching and eat up some other budget that you'd have? Like that's quite a common thing that we would say to people to get them to stop.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we find that like I often say it's like, you know, the end goal is a piece of design technology. To have a technical person involved from as early as possible, and have a designer involved for as long as possible just leads to better work. And especially we try and get involved earlier because sometimes there's things that we can just say, you know, this is going to take ages. Like, is there a better route to hit budget marks or launch dates? So I think it's really just trying to get that balance. But it's something that you're constantly working on.
Yeah. Jonathan, Sean mentioned earlier about, briefly touched upon the averageness of what AI could bring. Obviously, this is such a hot topic at the moment and one I've tried to keep my feet out of for as long as possible. But that, along with things like ChatGPT, and where, from your perspective, is that leading us in the reality, away from the hysteria of mainstream news that all reality is going to end within 18 months?
Yeah.
What's the reality of this? Can we truly embrace this? Can we integrate this into the way that we work? Can we use it to find quicker ways to do mundane tasks, or are we all facing oblivion?
Yeah, I think it's something that's really preoccupied our thinking since the start of the year. It's incredible how, like, it feels like from the start of the year, how much seismic shift it feels like has happened to the creative service industry. Like but it's really interesting to think about where it could go. I think it's for us as developers, it's we've found that like overnight there's been massive, like being able to use ChatGPT to write bits of code means that you can if you understand what you need to be asking it, like prompting is, if you can prompt it correctly, then you can, what would take hours you could get in minutes. That's just more efficient. Using things like Copilot, GitHub's Copilot, it's like super smart autocomplete. So you start writing some code and it gives you it just fills in the blanks, gives you autocomplete on the code. So it's for development, it's really interesting just to bring in the efficiencies. I think there's issues like trustability. So how far it goes into the world, it doesn't give you accurate responses all the time. So there's a trustability thing. So it'd be interesting to see like how fast it takes over really important things. Like people say it can take over being a lawyer, but it might not be. You don't know if it's going to be creating you something that's actually accurate. And these things are really important. So it might be that it just kind of takes over the more of the like entertainment side of things, and it's more of a distraction than actually like a productivity, massive productivity change. But yeah, it felt like since the start of the years, every new product, and there was dozens of new products every day that were like had AI baked into them somehow. And there's loads of like really interesting design tools now.
But our studio is
saving loads of time.
We're like actively adopting things, aren't we? We're not saying that things are we're not taking it from the negative side. We're seeing how these things can help, but they're very much assistants. At the moment they're just helping us be more efficient or be more accurate or sense check. But I don't feel like there's any immediate risk to anyone's work. It's just like having, I posted a thing the other day, it's like New York Times saying it's like a high functioning intern at the moment. So like if you treat that like what would you risk an intern having the control over in your business? That's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, but I think from my perspective, the productivity of using it for something like filling in code is quite innocent, isn't it? Because it speeds up tasks and allows you to achieve more within a certain time frame. But the potential for it to write someone's dissertation or make music off something that isn't.
But the thing is about, I think particularly with AI and creativity, it still requires a level of taste to know when it's hit the mark. So you can prompt it and you can say, create me an image, DALL-E, Midjourney, create me an image that looks like this, or write me a song. But you need to know when it is good. And so that's still this taste level that a human needs to be involved in, a human that has developed taste over experience and has natural taste levels. So I don't think that when it comes to like design and image making, and it's going to be really something that's used for time saving, efficiencies, and assisting and doing all these mundane tasks. Like that's the thing with writing code. It just cuts out the mundane tasks of, what you need to write, but rather than having to type it, it does it for you. And I think with design as well, it's like, what you want to create, and you're using these things to cut out the mundane tasks and get closer and faster to something.
But also, the whole premise of AI is it's trained to be average. So, when I was at Off this year, there was lots of talk about AI, and there was, the people were talking about, if you're comfortable being average, then be worried about AI. But as creatives, everyone should be striving to be, exceptional, not necessarily the best, but, exceptional in a field. And as long as people are pushing it like that, then there isn't an immediate risk, really. Like because AI is just the average of everything, the beige of. So if a company that you're working with is happy they would rather keep some money in the bank and have a generically internet generated logo, then they're okay with being average. They're probably not the sort of people you want to work with.
And also, when you put it like that, those people have probably always been like that pre-AI.
Yeah,
and they'd always be looking for cost savings. Yeah, anyway,
and they're not, and we all need clients that are that make our lives simple. But we also need clients that push us. You need to have people that, or you need self-initiated projects that push you. And so, I think AI is just, I think it would be naive if people didn't embrace it, but I don't see it as like an existential threat to what creatives do currently.
100%. this one's a little bit sort of predicting the future, I suppose. AI, we were talking about that, just where we think it's going to go. Is it that you can foresee the way that businesses and brands should start to use digital tools and platforms in the future that they're not currently? Can you foresee trends or predict where you think it might be going from experience?
I think the thing we see a lot of at the moment is, and I guess this is probably born out of the pandemic and lots of people moving remotely, but and we have this in our business as well, which is that you kind of pick and choose the best tool for a particular job within like a subscription service to run your business. And we probably have 10 subscriptions like Notion and Slack and Google and all these sort of things. And they're all probably the best at that one particular task. But the issue is, as the organization gets bigger and more people are there and there's more data, that everything takes actually longer because it's all spread all over the place. And so what we're finding is, this is more common with e-commerce, D2C brands that are expanding quite quickly, but we're getting briefed to do more sort of behind the scenes stitching things together. So I think I see that as a bit of a trend. It's not sexy, but it's like business logic stuff that sits behind the scenes that makes an organization more efficient. And ultimately, we're talking about mainly about data and moving things around. And that is where you can see AI playing a part in it. How can you uncover insights in your data set? How can you move data from here to there? How can you make decisions, predictable decisions?
Yeah, and those sort of things have always been quite a frustration, I found, because you find one platform that you like using or you get comfortable with, but then there seems to be an ever evolving within the same sort of space that offer ever such a slight difference, but not that much where you can house it all under one. I was hearing a conversation with, it's off topic slightly, but the team behind DAZN, the boxing channel, and obviously sports rights has become, the subscription part of sports rights is just obscene now. Just to watch, you say if you support a team in the Premier League, you need 8 different subscriptions costing you on average about £190 a month just to sort of, maybe they might be on one of those things, but if you've got to take the risk, otherwise you miss out. And they were looking at their future was that they'd stream the sport, but then they'd also want to acquire bookies, a betting firm, to be within that platform, then their own social media platform. So you could just basically be, if you were a fan of that sport, you could stay within that platform. And I suppose in some ways they're creating a monopoly. And can you imagine that happening more and more, where it's opposed to being splintered and spread out everywhere, people want to just sort of have one place? And even though that might not be good for business or from a business perspective, but it would be for the one that owned it. For all the others, it'd be quite terrible, wouldn't it? But for the consumer, it's just that ease of use.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the way that the web's moving, and everything being API driven means you can do things like that. Like you can have, particularly e-commerce, and now you can have some Shopify that's managing your product and your customer and your store data, and you can have a headless CMS that's managing all the content, and you can have all these different other third-party services that all do very specific tasks. And because everything now has APIs, you can then stitch everything together and create an experience that's above than what you used to be able to do. Yeah, I think that type of thing's really interesting. The other kind of technical thing I've been thinking of, I saw yesterday, is Webflow now. So the other thing that's Sean and I have been thinking a lot about is AI can basically write code. There are now lots of, it's not going to be long before you can design something in Figma and press a button and it's going to export your website. I think it's going to be a lot easier to put websites and web products out into the world. And you've seen that with the rise of these like low code, no code design web builders like Squarespace and Webflow. And so Webflow have now released something called DevLink. And so what you can do is you can actually like design like complex React components that you could use in a web product in Webflow and export them as, React code, tested perfect React code that you can just drop into a code base, a React code base. This type of thing, this type kind of like design technology, I think is a really interesting space. And Figma now has been bought by Adobe. It'd be interesting to see how they move closer to the code.
Yeah, things like, it's quite a naive question, I think, but things like Squarespace, are they a good thing? Do they open that up for people like myself that maybe don't have enough knowledge to build from scratch? It allows, but I'm not sure if that is a good thing or not, a copy and paste type template.
Yeah, I think I think they're incredibly powerful. It means that people can build a web presence, and you don't need to know technology. You don't need to pay developers to build you something. You have control over it. I think from a designer's point of view, it means you can learn these, particularly Webflow, which you can do really complex things, and you've got an idea in your head and you can build it, particularly something that's got movement. If you've got an idea for a design site that's got movement, it's a lot easier if you can build that, and you can do that in Webflow. I think, it's not just the design thing. Now there's like low code, no code tools to help with the function, more business functions. And I think that's a really interesting space. But yeah, I think like a typical, and that's what we're trying to do as our business, move away from simpler marketing websites, because you can build beautiful things in Webflow. You don't need a developer to do that. So we're trying to move into more things that are a little bit more complex and require more complex thinking, which could be, the size of the site, or scalability, or stability, or security, or extra functionality that you can't do with these tools.
Yeah, can you see?
Most of our work actually comes from like second or third time websites, isn't it? Really, it's like people that start with a Squarespace or a WordPress or something, and then they come to us when there's enough issues with efficiency or whatever that they require something a bit more bespoke.
So I suppose they act as a bit of a proof of concept, can't they? Because they're free.
Exactly, yeah. And that's positive. That's positive for us, because you've got your if someone's taken the time to sort of figure out what they don't like about their existing thing, that makes the brief easier for us. So you're not trying to teach them that there's this, or upsell something that they don't need. It's like, okay, you've realized that you can't have more than 5 people edit it at the same time, or you realize that it's slow. Of the page, WordPress, we get all the time people saying it takes 5 seconds for a page to load. We know what their problems are, so then you can target those. So it's a really easy thing for us to sort of plan around.
Yeah, and has that sort of gap, has that always existed, where you've got maybe startups, or people just freelancers, or people just wanting to do something on the side to test it, like we just said, and then they can use those platforms. Sometimes they're free, but when you get to a paid subscription, they can be quite a problem. If you're turning over, from an e-commerce perspective, a few £100, you can justify that income. But then when they want to take that leap, if you guys are then maybe developing or looking to develop things more complex, or from a maybe upgrading business from size and team and products, etc., that gap, I suppose, will widen then, won't it? Because there'll be more people experimenting with the cheaper option.
Yeah, and also it's not just about what a bespoke build could do that an off-the-shelf thing couldn't. It's also when the company gets to a certain size when they don't want to manage it themselves anymore. Just like we don't want to manage. We got to a certain point where we can't manage our finances anymore. It's too big. We need to hire someone who actually knows what they're doing. So it's like we find. We had a conversation last week with someone that's a designer, and he's managing someone's WordPress site, and he's like, I just can't do it anymore. I don't enjoy it. Please, can you guys do something for us instead? So there's both the price point and also just when a company gets to a point where they don't want to manage it anymore, that they start with it.
They do quite quickly become slightly like a noose, don't they? Because the more you put, the more that you need to be on it each time, and it can become quite you lose.
But we're I think the other thing that, because as a studio, we build everything from scratch. We use Next.js as a React framework as a front end, and you always use like a headless CMS, like Contentful, or using Storyblock on one, or loads of them. But what you can do with when you're building things from scratch, you just got a lot of creative freedom. You're not building things within, this is one thing, I'm moving away from WordPress. You're not building things within some kind of templated structure. You can do anything. And same with like Shopify. You're not building things within a liquid template structure. You've got loads of creative freedom to be able to change the flow through an e-commerce platform, change how people are shopping, change how people are discovering products and weaving content in. So that's why we and that's what we like, and that's why we always build things from scratch. But it's not always the best solution. It doesn't always fit. Sometimes it's not needed. So we're open to different technical solutions to different challenges.
Yeah, but I think like you were saying a little bit earlier about the way that you've got such a strong focus on design. I think if you do step into that templated world as a solution for you, that's right at any given point. Still having some sort of knowledge of design is still really important, isn't it? About how things go together and work. It's you can drag and drop things, but it's still good to be able to sort of see those frames in a useful light, for a usability perspective, as opposed to just because you like certain things. I think the concern is when people don't have any of that knowledge, it sometimes can be a bit detrimental to the brand in the long term. But I suppose that's all about the development process.
Well, also, like, if you've got into Squarespace or WordPress as a designer and you've been able to make something happen, then, like Jonathan said, like, the reason for him learning to code in the first place was being closer to the developers in order to brief them more accurately. Like the more you can understand about the process, the more you're going to be able to build things that are more interesting and more more creative, because you're going to have a better idea of what it takes to develop that. And I think that's one of our key positions is sort of like that mediator between design and developer, like that old school clash that there always was, a designer wanting to do something and a developer just saying no. Like we're like desperate to sort of dispel those myths and try and be the kind of friendlier face of development. And so we learn more about design and we embed ourselves in the design world. And I think the more that the designers can embed themselves in the dev world, then you're just going to make better stuff.
Yeah, and away from, I'm conscious of time, slipping by as usual, away from the wider future of digital space, as a business, where are you seeing Midnight move towards?
Yeah, we're trying to move more into doing more like technical consulting particularly for agencies. So one thing that we're really trying to work on at the moment, push, is getting more involved in the like strategy and the business side of the agencies we're working with, and helping them sell and deliver more digital projects, and helping like educate and their internal teams about how technology works, and also trying to move more into innovation, and something that, like, from a product background and previous work we're doing, is like we love experimenting and coming up with ideas and thinking about, like Sean and I both are, is like if you get into web development, probably because you're a problem solver, and when you're a problem solver, you're just looking for ways to make things better and more efficient, and writing code is one tool that we have. So we're coming up with ideas and looking at efficiencies. So we're trying to do more innovation and more experiments and build stuff, not just for ourselves, but also help our clients be more innovative when it comes to technology.
Yeah, I'm hearing that a lot at the moment about the work that not just agency owners, but maybe their wider team, how much they're looking to integrate themselves into, because it seems to have split quite a lot. There's a lot of niche studios working on specific things, even within branding space or the strategy space. There's a lot of, they don't just offer this one size fits all for everything, but by having core partners that are really skilled at what they do, there's like a diversifying of skills within the industry itself, let alone what the clients and the brands and the public see. So it's always an interesting place. Virginia, is that something you'd advise people to do that are maybe of a similar sort of size and position, is to look at all of these other avenues because of technology taking over other spaces that you need to sort of find ways of generating new revenue streams and things like that?
Yeah, I think the main thing that we've done, I think that's why we're still here now, like whilst we're growing, is I think we're quite generous with our time, and I think like just not charging people for everything you say, like give away advice, be helpful, and we do turn away quite a lot of work, or we say to people, don't spend your money on us, spend it on something else, because you need that more than you need us at the moment. Or like Jonathan's just explained, like maybe you don't need a bespoke website, maybe you need a Squarespace instead for a fraction of the cost. And we're quite open about having these conversations because we know that like trust for us is really important, and people will come back to us. So I just think I don't know about whether there's people need to like niche down or find little avenues of more regular income or whatever, but I just think like the main lesson that we've got is just being honest and truthful, and that will pay dividends in the long run.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a cliche, isn't it? But just being a nice person goes a hell of a long way, whatever world you're living in, and whatever part of business you find yourself in. I think it's even more important now than ever, like, sort of just to be present and sort of show up and take part in things, and like things like this, for instance. Appreciate you giving me your time to take part in this without any explanation about what's going on. So it's gone all right. We haven't had any hiccups yet, and we've got to 45 minutes exactly without any these stutters. So I appreciate your time, guys, and I think this could go on forever. It literally opens so many different avenues of conversations. And like I said earlier, hopefully in future we'll be able to explore more of those with you in a bit more in depth, and also as trends change and as things grow and things evolve and go in all different directions, it will allow us to talk about different topics. So until next time, I appreciate your time. Have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you all soon.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.